Hello and welcome to Health and Wellness, your guide to the integrated personal and financial retirement journey for physicians. I'm your host, Michael Swartz, Certified Financial Planner and Master Certified Physician Development Coach. Welcome back to the Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Swartz, Certified Financial Planner and Physician Development Coach. Today, I'm very excited to introduce Emma Crawford. She is the owner of October Student Loans. And I welcome her to the podcast because we're just going to have a conversation, kind of the frequently asked questions. There's a lot of questions right now surrounding the uncertainty of student loans. So with that, Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm super excited to be here today.
Well, I'm excited to have you too. And as most folks know, before the podcast, people kind of have this back and forth conversation, getting ready to have the conversation in public. And I just want to bring you into some pretty good levity here. Emma and I kind of bonded over the fact that we're both nerds about the math, but Emma specifically, proudly a nerd on student loans. So you're in good company for those listeners out there. This is what she does full time. So with that, Emma, do you mind sharing just a little bit about your practice, about October Loans, and what you do professionally?
Yes. Yep. So great question. So thanks again for having me. I'm a total student loan nerd and I'm super excited and happy to be here today. So at October Loan Strategies or octoberloans.com, I am a certified financial professional who specializes in student loan planning and repayment and forgiveness planning. So I work with many physicians. I used to work at UW-Medicine's medical school, and teachers, veterinarians, dentists, small business owners. I work with a lot of different types of people, really helping them get loan forgiveness. So it's usually on a project-based basis, where I onboard you, we create a student loan plan together and talk about it, and then I let you implement it. If people need help later on, which is kind of common, they come back for annual review meetings, or maybe things change or questions come up along the way, I just switch to an hourly model. But I'm really here to help people or help give them clarity and hope and peace of mind around their student loan debt, which usually results in some type of student loan forgiveness, either through the public service loan forgiveness program or through a 20 to 30 year income driven repayment plan.
Excellent. And I think a lot of people really forget about that 20 to 30 year plan because that PSLF is such a popular topic. But with that, a lot of questions these days. And so you've seen a lot. We kind of communicated back and forth about what we cover today. And so, if someone were to come to you and say, all right, Emma, I'd like to hire you for my services. My student loan debt is $300,000 and I'm in my fourth year of residency and I'm just about to become an attending physician. What are some of those kind of circumstances that you would look at? What are the details that you'd say, here's the things we need to know to create this plan? What's their starting point?
Yeah, great question. So I gather a lot of information from my clients. So I give you a questionnaire to fill out. I'll ask for a copy of your federal student loan data file, which is something we all have access to on our studentaid.gov accounts. It's basically like the Bible of our student loan history. I'll also ask about income information and what your goals are. And so for physicians, especially those who are in training still, I think there are some really unique opportunities that exist there. For example, would it make sense for you to switch repayment plans? Does it make sense, if you're married, do you file taxes jointly or separately? Especially if you reside in Wisconsin in a community property state, it might be easier to do that than, say, someone who lives in a non-community property state, I guess, from a financial standpoint. Or do we have you apply for a tax extension, depending on when you apply for the plan and when you have to recertify? So there are a lot of unique unique planning opportunities that exist for medical trainees specifically, and even physicians who are now attendings working outside of training. But those are all kinds of the things that I kind of touch on or consider when I'm working with clients, even, not specific to physicians, even just anyone in general.
Awesome. So when you're looking at their plans, you mentioned income-based repayment plans and income-driven repayment plans, the IBRs and the IDRs. Technical differentiation there, but for people who are looking maybe specifically at the SAVE plan, that's the one that's really popped up as kind of the smoking gun, if you will, or the sore thumb, where it seems to just keep getting kind of in the mix. It was eligible, then it wasn't. Now it might be. It was in forbearance. Now interest is accruing. Could you just talk specifically about that SAVE plan and maybe a couple situations that you've seen where folks it makes sense to stay on, or for others it makes sense to get off of that plan?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. So the SAVE plan, it was a really great option that was originally unveiled by the Biden administration, then has since been blocked basically by or within the courts, and it's still blocked as of today. So it's been blocked for the past 2 years. And so borrowers who maybe were switched from repay to save or who had applied to save have been stuck in this forbearance. And I think what's really important to know about the forbearance is that it does not count toward public service loan forgiveness. They eventually have to buy it back through the buyback program, which we can talk about in a little bit too, if that's helpful. So what I am recommending that people do is really consider switching into a different income-driven repayment plan, like income-based repayment, or maybe even pay or ICR, which are both going to go away in July of 2028. I just don't want to have to rely on that buyback program for more than we need to. So I am recommending that most of my clients switch if they can afford the new monthly payment on a different plan. With that said, I did also work with another client recently whose payment was going to drastically increase, and they're just in a tighter spot right now where they would not be able to afford those monthly payments. And so they are actually going to stay on the save forbearance for as long as possible and then use the buyback program, which will hopefully have a lower overall cost to that. So if people can afford a monthly payment on a different plan, I am recommending that they switch, just because the buyback backlog for applications is over a year right now. And so I just don't want to have to rely on that more than we need to. I don't think it will go away necessarily, but I have clients who are stuck in that waiting queue right now, and I'm anticipating that it will last over a year at this rate, unfortunately.
Okay, and so when you say they're in that queue, it- just for the average listener out there, I want to explain the scenario very succinctly. Basically, they had, let's say, 20 months of payments that were in that forbearance period. They have 100 qualifying payments, and that buyback would basically get them that full 120 for the PSLF 10-year repayment. Is that true?
Perfect. You said it beautifully, Michael. Yes, you said it more succinctly than I could ever. So yes, so they use the buyback when they would have enough qualifying payments, so that 120, that that magic number needed for PSLF to be eligible for forgiveness with that forbearance. So I have clients who are at the very tail end, but just need those save forbearance payments. They need to buy them back through the buyback program. But that processing is so slow because it's a relatively new option for folks. I've only had one physician client get the buyback approved. The lump sum was pretty large. I really truthfully don't understand how they came up with such a large number, but he was just ready to be done with it. And so he gladly paid it and then got his loans forgiven shortly after.
Well, you could certainly plead the fifth on this one because I don't think anyone claims to completely understand the PSLF program. You are the expert, though. I'm not meaning to undermine you at all. But if someone has these forbearance payments, and let's say they transition from residency to attending or fellowship to attending, in that period where they were going into forbearance, their income goes from $60,000 a year to $400,000 a year. Do you know how they calculate that buyback? Is it based on the payments that would have happened in their residency, or is it based on their income on the day they make that 120th payment? So 20 payments at 5,000 a month is very different than 20 payments at 500 a month. Do you know how the PSLF program plans to tackle that? With full disclosure that this is relatively in its infancy in and of itself.
Yes, great question. So they do have really clear verbiage on studentaid.gov. So for anyone listening, if you're curious, if you go to studentaid.gov and search PSLF buyback, there is a pretty good description of how they calculate the monthly payments. My understanding is that it should be the lesser of the two. So like, what were they paying right before the forbearance? And then what would they maybe be paying afterward potentially? And then take the lesser of that. But I think that also a little bit depends on, I guess there's a chance that during the buyback process, the borrower would be asked to supply their tax information. And so like, I think that there's a chance that if someone provided a high income tax year, that those calculations would be, miscalculated and then end up being significantly higher. But studentaid.gov, if you search for PSLF buyback, has really good verbiage on how they calculate that monthly payment. But I think what's difficult is if we don't understand the monthly payment, we don't really have a great person to ask. And for anyone listening who has student loans, I'm sure you know it better than I do, that if you call your loan servicer, you can't always trust the advice that you're given, unfortunately. So it's very frustrating. Yeah, it's a very complicated system, unfortunately, as I know you know too, Michael, with your clients.
Absolutely. And I would say, I mean, that's across the board right now. Professional services as a whole, I don't think you can trust the answers you get over the phone because we even see it with our custodian. We call in, and depending on who you talk to, you're going to get a different answer. And so you really want to have a record of that phone call. You may ask to have them, provide an email or a transcript or something from that phone call so you can substantiate, the he said, she said at some point in the future as well. But I also think that really highlights the importance of working with a professional like yourself or myself. Not that necessarily this is a promotion stage, but just if you have someone who's in this on a daily basis, they're going to understand that nuance. They're not going to take that phone conversation as gospel, and understanding that I think is a critically important part of this. That even if you have the tenacity of, a professional who knows how to tackle this, having another professional on your side who's going to be basically in your corner and knows what games to play, and where some of those shortcomings might be. If you get the information that you're wanting to hear, but you might actually have a little bit of a red flag if the information isn't the same information you got on the last, the first seven calls, and
Yes,
here on the eighth call is something different. So, I
absolutely.
guess with that, Emma, if someone were considering working with you, would you mind sharing just a little bit about your fee structure, about your hourly rate, so that if there are folks out there who have student loans that they'd like your help with, what does it cost to hire you?
Yes, great question. So I like to funnel, for first-time clients who are working with me for the first time, I have two different kind of project rates. So one is $5.99 for one borrower. So if you're married and your spouse doesn't have student loans, you'd still fall under that $5.99 fee. If you're married and both of you have student loan debt, it's $8.99. And the reason why I charge a little bit more is it takes more time because both of your student loan payment plans can impact one another, which is really important. And so I funnel everyone kind of through that initial project. And so that includes, the $5.99 fee, includes a 60-minute Zoom meeting with me, a multi-page customized student loan plan, which includes monthly payment projections, a timeline of recommendations, and then step-by-step instructions for all recommendations I am recommending. And then the meeting recording and 30 days of email support. Same goes for the $8.99 plan. Afterward, once we've created that initial plan, and if you need things later on, I would say most of my clients come back for annual review meetings or just for those questions through email or for a quick phone call. My hourly rate's $300 an hour, but I bill kind of similar to a lawyer where I only bill for the actual time spent in 6-minute increments. It's very specific. But that way you're only paying that project fee once, and I'm here kind of as you need me moving forward. So I think that gives folks a reasonable assurance that there's never any pressure to contact me again, although I sure hope that they do if and when they need something. So I think it's just nice for them to know that I'm kind of in their back pocket waiting for them to need anything.
Absolutely. And I will be the first proponent of your professional abilities. I mean, I firmly believe that whatever you offer will clearly be demonstrable in value in multiples of the fee that you're charging. And so when you look at this and say, okay, I'm going to pay $600 or $900 or $599, $899, and walk into this conversation, I mean, especially for physicians, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line here.
Yeah.
I don't see why someone wouldn't do this, especially if they have any questions or uncertainty about the program. If it was straightforward and there wasn't this forbearance period, the save plan wasn't kind of up for questioning, the buyback, whether or not it actually goes through, and this 1 year extension that we're looking at, which I'd love to talk a little bit more about those details as well. $599 to have a confident, straightforward professional plan for you, seems like a phenomenal way to invest your money, right? I don't see this as a cost either. This is an investment in making sure that we are taking care of a very complicated system as efficiently as possible. So the value proposition there, Emma, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader here on the call.
Thanks,
Um,
Michael. I
if
appreciate
anyone's out
that.
there has ever been debating whether or not PSLF planning is for you and whether or not Emma's the person to do it for you, yes and yes. let's just
Thank
let's just
you.
help them out. So specifically, then with that buyback period, you mentioned kind of that 1 year holding pattern, or let's say anyone who goes beyond that 120 payments, but the automatic withdrawals keep coming out. Okay, so somebody goes to get PSLF, it takes them 8 months to get approved. What happens with those 8 months in payments that they continue to make, or with that extra year in the extension? What was that scenario like?
Yeah, great question. So what I usually advise is that for people who are at the end and are applying for the buyback and are just waiting to get that golden letter where their loans have been forgiven, or for the buyback offer, they're waiting to know what lump sum they have to pay. It is likely best to stop paying at that point. So they do have the choice of going into a forbearance. I don't think that will necessarily happen automatically. So you'll have to call your student loan servicer and say, "Hey, I just applied for the PSLF buyback program. Can you put my loans in forbearance so that way no payments are due?" I think it's important to note though that if you made a mistake and maybe weren't eligible for buyback and maybe had a few more months to go, then you would need to make a lump sum payment at that point then too if you did stop making payments. Other people, though, if I have some clients who they're like, screw it, I don't want to wait for PSLF buyback. I'd honestly just rather continue making payments on an income driven repayment plan for X amount of time. I have some clients doing that. And at this point, we don't know if they would ever be refunded any difference, like if they did end up doing the buyback as well. So it really comes, at the end of the day, I want my clients to know what their options are, and I want them to do whatever kind of helps them sleep at night too. And so that's kind of a goal that I want my clients to leave feeling better than when they came in when they first initially met with me. But that's going to look different for everybody. But I think it's really important to know what the options are and to be able to clearly explain those to others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so from what I'm hearing you say, which is actually different than from what my understanding was, I've actually heard other, right, water cooler talk, if you will, that the loan should continue to be paid. And then once it's forgiven, you would just get that money back. Whatever overpayments you made, they'll settle that up with you later. And so I'm actually a little bit interested to hear more about that.
Potentially, yeah. So you bring up a good point, Michael. So theoretically, if someone applies for a buyback and then but those automatic payments are continuing to be made, like they continue to make payments, they should get a refund. However, we are
Should.
seeing issues with refunds. Like I actually am part, for folks listening to, if you're on Facebook, there's a really, I think it's literally called PSLF support group. There are like tens of thousands of members in it. I have no affiliation to it. I'm just kind of like a fly on the wall. Someone recently posted that they got a refund for over the 120 payments required for like 2 years later. And then I also just got an email from a prospective client earlier today that she has not gotten a refund, even though her loans were forgiven a while ago. But then I've had other clients who have gotten refunds within 2 months of their loans being forgiven. So theoretically, if you pay over the 120 required, you should get a refund. But with everything going on with the dumpster fire that is student loans right now, I don't depend on it, if that makes sense. Like I would see it as like a cherry on top, if anything, but I would not literally depend on that money or plan on that money, as unfortunately as that is.
I love that because that flows into another recommendation that I've heard that you can either substantiate or completely deny that filing annually to get that report back from PSLF to know what your payments are as of a specific date is a good practice to be a part of. Do you recommend for your clients who are 5, 6, 7 years into this program of PSLF to file annually to get that number back from PSLF? You have this many qualifying payments and this is your estimated forgiveness date. Or do you say every 3 years, every 5 years, or only when you're over 100? I guess what's your rule of thumb, if you will, or your standard recommendation for folks?
Yes, that's a really great question. So, at minimum, I think it's really important to go to studentaid.gov, go to the PSLF help tool, and to enter in your employment information annually. Because every time you submit it, it gets sent to your employer. They verify you're working there, and then your payment count is updated on studentaid.gov. So theoretically, for borrowers listening, if you have submitted any PSLF forms through the PSLF help tool on studentaid.gov, that is how you count your progress toward the 120 payments required for PSLF forgiveness. Then once that form is processed, your payment count will appear on studentaid.gov right when you log in, and you'll be able to see your qualifying payments made. So yeah, you bring up a great question, Michael. So definitely do it annually. I would also do it anytime you leave a job and then anytime you start a new one, because I just don't trust federal student aid and student loan servicers to be able to capture, years potentially of payments. I've heard of mistakes happening that way. And then it takes them longer to count it. And I would just recommend doing it annually at the very
And
minimum.
then
The
and
very
then comes back that should get their overpayments back. But if you don't know when that number is, that could add, yeah, tens of thousands of dollars on either side of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I actually yeah, so like do it annually at minimum. But if you're someone that prefers to do it earlier, more often, that's perfectly fine. Like you could do it every 6 months if that kind of gives you the peace of mind knowing that your payments are being counted along the way. The fewer months or payments that need to be counted, the quickly that it will, the more that the more quick it will be processed. Like, and actually, that is something that's actually being processed fairly quickly right now. So if you submit an employer form through PSLF Help Tool, you'll probably get an updated payment count on studentaid.gov within a week or so. So that is one of the few things that are being processed very quick right now, which is very good.
Well, I would take a peek behind the curtain there too and just say within that workflow is you putting in your employer's contact information. They receive an email to verify that. And so it is a very good idea to not, I would say I've seen more success with folks who actually contact HR ahead of time and get a person, not the HR general tool, for submitting those PSLF forgiveness recommendations or verifications for employment. So rather than doing, HR at myemployer.com, actually giving a phone call or an email over to HR and saying, who specifically as an individual should I be getting this email to, and expect it within a week so that you can approve that or at least verify the income and employment history. I guess, is that something that you've seen as well?
So yes, for tips for it, making sure it's processed faster, I totally agree with what you just said, Michael. Like reach out to HR and get a specific person who can sign off on the form. So when a borrower goes to the PSLF help tool and they're filling it out on studentaid.gov, they'll they I would recommend choosing electronic signature so that the form will be literally emailed to whoever's email you put in there, and then putting in a specific person's email, like you said, Michael, so they know to look out for it. They know who you are and they know that you work there. So it's usually someone in HR. It could also be a supervisor too, if they feel comfortable verifying when you've worked there. And for PSLF, you need to work an average of 30 hours per week. So it used to be more than that, but they recently changed that. So it's 30 hours per week on average. And then any sick, vacation, or FMLA time, like maternity or paternity leave, that counts as well too. So that's another common question that I get.
Okay, so when you say, because this is a very specific question, I actually do have a client who's looking at dropping to a point 0.7. Now, point 0.7 would be 28 hours per week on a typical 40-hour per week schedule, which we know no physicians work, but a point 0.7 on paper looks like 28 hours. And so she had some questions for me that was specific to that. Was it, okay, but if I have some administration time or if I have charting time, that working 30 hours per week, is that going to be affected or questioned if I'm a point 0.7 and that calculation kind of on the paycheck looks like 28 hours, but I know that I'm working more than 30 and it's an average. So what does that average apply to? Is it each time you apply? So let's say she switched to a point 0.75 years into her career. Is that 30 hours from year 5 through 10 or an average of the whole 120 payments? Could you kind of tease out some of those cobwebs and clarify how that average of 30 hours actually looks for that specific scenario?
Yes, that's a great question. So the best way that I can explain it from that question is like, what if I'm actually 28 hours, but I work more because I'm doing admin time? It really comes down to whether or not that person signing your form can verify that you're working an average of 30 hours per week. That's the most important thing. Federal student aid and the folks reviewing the forms will take their signature as proof that you are working there an average of 30 hours per week. So it's really important to have that conversation with that person saying, hey, I actually work, my contract says I'm 0.7 and I'm working 28, but I'm actually doing more because I have all these other things that come up. Like a lot of people end up working more than their contracts say. So the person that is signing the form needs to be able to verify that you work an average of 30 hours per week. The average, the best way I can explain that to you, I have to laugh because it's kind of up to interpretation. What I say is it's an average of when you have worked there and when you are signing off on the form for.
Okay.
So and once again, it comes back down to the person signing the form as well too. So if you started at 40 hours, now you're down to 20 and it still averaged out to at least 30 or more, you should be totally fine because it's an average of, it should, as long as the average is 30 hours per week, you should be good. And once again, it comes down to that person signing the form. So it's important to ask those questions and to have a really good conversation with them before you actually ask them to sign the form so they know what they're signing to.
That is awesome. So right there, I would say I owe you a planning fee for that alone. And so for anyone watching or listening and hearing this advice, I guess my biggest question is if you have any questions, why wouldn't you be working with someone like Emma? Because I want to hear some of the success stories. I mean, when a client comes in and they say, "Oh my God," and you say, "I know," let's let's start there. I know what we're going to talk about, and this is a disaster. They just take me through the arc of a relationship with you. They come in destitute, overwhelmed, uncertain, forbearance, interest starts accumulating, and they're like, "Holy crap, please help me." And you're like, "That's what I do."
Yep.
Let's start there. Where do we go from there?
Yes, I think it's really important that like I really empathize with people's anxiety and stress. More often than not, I would say like 80 to 90% of my clients, as you know too, Michael, working with your clients, um, debt comes with stress. It really does. It's typical, but it's not, it doesn't feel good. It's not normal, either. Like this is not like this is a very broken system and it's not easy for anyone to navigate. Even I get confused and come up with questions all the time. And there are things that I don't know too. So for someone who does this for a living, I still get confused too. And I tell that with my clients too. So clients usually come to me because they don't know where else to turn. They've tried doing it themselves. Like I literally just had a phone call with a prospect the other day, and she was like, I feel like I need a full-time job just to learn this information and then to like understand it and to continue to keep up with the changes. So I want to kind of bring all of my years of experience doing this and distill it into this customized student loan plan that really makes things very clear and gives the borrower hope. Like they will leave feeling like they have a good plan in place that they can trust and they know exactly what they need to do. So people usually comment on how much better they feel toward the end of my meeting. They're like, hey, I've been called student loan angel. People say that they have hope. Some people cry because either they're stressed or they feel good after their loans are forgiven. Like I'm in a really privileged position where I get to see those success stories. But usually, like you said, it starts with anxiety, but then it ends with hope, which is
And
really exciting to see.
I'm hearing a lot too, and speaking specifically to the scientists, kind of the engineering mindset is you come in feeling completely out of control and you leave feeling completely in control. And the emotions that come with that are kind of an absolution of anxiety and into that sense of relief, empowerment. And not genuinely, when you say, I feel like I should have a full-time job, that's absolutely true. That's why you have a full-time job doing this, is the program
Yeah.
is so complex, it's so nuanced, it's so subjective, right? Single, married, is there a discrepancy in income? Is it totally equal? And you even touched on that whole marital property state in Wisconsin, where I'm talking with Ben in our office, who you know very well, who's a tax
Yep.
preparer, and he's actually submitted proper way to file tax returns in a community property state like Wisconsin is. And he actually got letters back saying, why are you filing them this way for the
Yes.
PSLF program? And so even when we do it the way the letter of the law requires us to do it, we're getting feedback from the institution inquiring about why we're doing it that way. And then when he says, well, it's a marital property state, and so, or community property state, and so of course it's 50-50 for the income across these married filing separate returns. And they say, oh yeah, yep, you did it right. My bad. We have full-time
Exactly.
jobs, and that kind of leans back into that point of depending on who you talk to, depending on who reviews or approves these requests, there's a lot of subjectivity in every step of the program. So if folks come in and feel overwhelmed, I think to your point about empathizing and acknowledging that, like it's legitimate. Your full-time job is to practice medicine or to teach or to go work at a non-for-profit. Your job is not to be a student loan professional. That's Emma's. But then you come back to the whole point of, but even depending on the professionals that you talk to, you might be getting a different answer. So having kind of that cache of experiences to draw from and say, well, 90% of the time, my answer is this. Why is it different this time? At least you know, hey, I've got a little bit of more curiosity about this one. Can you explain it? Can you differentiate those circumstances versus this one? And that's really the only way to become really good at providing, offering guidance is knowing what the nuances are and knowing what questions to ask and which holes to poke. And really, that's where you step in and take people, like you said, as the student loan angel from completely overwhelmed with anxiety to that sense of relief and ultimately the forgiveness. I mean, that is the balloon moment, right? The confetti moment, the
Oh,
championship
it's
moment.
amazing.
And
Wonderful.
what an amazing experience. So can you just talk to a couple really good cases where you've got student loan forgiveness and you've got to celebrate or really experience that with a client? What is that feeling like?
Oh, it's amazing. And it's something that I want for every one of my clients. Like that's my goal in working with clients. Like I take that keen eye toward forgiveness. So it's how do we get there? As my website says, I'm going to help get you there as quickly and painlessly as possible. One recent client had been working for qualifying employers for over a decade. And I helped her kind of file the paperwork. That's where it kind of like it was kind of stuck. She needed help filing the paperwork and kind of following up with employers and just reasonable reassurance that she was doing all of the right things. She got over 6 figures of student loan debt forgiven. And then within 2 months, she's one of the clients that got it very quickly. She got, I think, between $15,000 and $20,000 in a refund. And it came at a time where she had to pay for surgery for her dog that was very expensive. So instead of going into credit card debt or worrying about how she was going to pay for it, this refund came in at a super great timing, and she was able to use that for the dog surgery. Other times it's people who maybe grew up low income like myself, where they just like didn't understand what it was like to take out student loans and are now, I've been working as a teacher for a super long time and just needed help getting to the finish line. I remember he's very like a stoic kind of, very stoic individual. And the fact that he cried and like broke down crying in tears when he got loan forgiveness, like I think sharing those moments is something that I will never take for granted and I get teary eyed too when it happens. Like I am my clients' one of my clients' biggest cheerleaders, and to be able to celebrate with them at the finish line when they didn't think it was possible for them, I think it's literally the best job in the world. Like I really cannot imagine doing anything else, except I say that, and I do teach at UW-Madison, which I enjoy too. I love that. But student loan planning is really like my pride and joy. I absolutely love it.
Well, I'm really happy that you found your niche, and we're grateful for people like you because I know even as a certified financial planner, that's not for me. I'm happy to help my
Right.
clients with it as an addition to the services that I offer, but definitely not something where I would go and build an entire practice around it. So God
I
bless you,
don't blame you.
Emma,
I don't blame
for
you.
for this being the cross that you're willing to bear. And I do want to just kind of reemphasize kind of destigmatizing financial planners or financial professionals as a whole.
Yep.
What you really did there is you took away, right? The math is absolutely the table stakes. You need to be a qualified professional to optimize the mathematical factors that influence these decisions. But I think what you and I have bonded over as we got to know each other and why our office works so well with yours, and you work so well with several others, by the way. I'm obviously not the only financial planner you know. Um, but the reason that you work so well with others is you go well beyond the math. You acknowledge the human elements of it, right? Nobody's saying, well, hey, yes, you get a refund, it's $20,000. You're saying that $20,000 is a medical bill for my dog. That is actually physical and emotional release for me, even as a stoic individual, to be able to break down and let that go, to say my debt is finally gone. I mean, these are the human stories, right? The ways that you connect with people and you support them. You don't just cheerlead with them. You grab their hand and you say, we're going to walk this journey together and we're going to get you to the end. And when we do, it's going to feel amazing. So let's go. And so I think for you to be able to champion that, to be able to champion your clients is a phenomenal thing because you go so far beyond the math, right? You're not just filing the paperwork with them. You're not just doing the step-by-step process, but you're actually connecting with them and helping them through that process. So I really just wanted to reiterate and highlight that because it's a very unique way to approach finances, and here you are doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and as you know, Michael, I feel like we have such great careers where we have the opportunity and the privilege to like get it, do a deep dive into people's lives. Like you said, it's money is mathematical, it's financial, but a lot of it is connected to emotions too. And so being able to give people those options back and opportunities and to help them feel better about themselves and their lives and to like have just that peace of mind that comes with knowing that you have someone that's kind of walking this path with you that you can really lean on and depend on for whatever it is, whether it's a financial planner or a physician that you really trust, or for me, a physical therapist who I just met with this morning. Having those people that are there to support you and cheerlead you along the way, it's super meaningful. And I am really grateful that you and I are in such a great career. It's a privilege. Absolutely.
It is. It is. And so, on that topic, kind of as a close to our conversation here today, the biggest fear that I see a lot of people having who are 4 or 5, 6 years in is PSLF going away? Should these people be pulling the fire alarm and paying off their student loan debts as quickly as possible with all of this forbearance and uncertainty on different repayment plans? Is PSLF going to evaporate on them and have the rug pulled out in years 7, 8, or 9? Do you see that as a possibility at all? Because that is one of the largest fears I see from folks who are, in year 4 or 5 transitioning from residency to attending physician status.
It's a great question. Yeah, that's like the $1 million question. I get it a lot too. And I think it's really easy to think that that would be the case, especially with like scary news stories and things that have been happening over the past few months too, because there were some negotiated rulemaking sessions along like trying to limit certain employers if they were doing certain things, like or allegedly doing certain things. So if I can put it succinctly, I have great faith and optimism in the public service loan forgiveness program continuing to exist. Maybe what brings me pause or more concern is like the individual requirements that can change. Like we're kind of talking about today, the different qualifying plans, the income driven repayment plans can and have and probably will change in the future. Maybe there will be some things that happen with employers. I haven't heard anything recently, but maybe that will change. Overall, though, I really have a lot of faith and optimism in PSLF continuing to be an option. With that said, for people who maybe want to protect themselves in the case that it doesn't work out for whatever reason, I know some people will still continue making those payments toward their loans while on an income driven repayment plan and start saving in some sort of a high yield savings account, like a kind of like a cash fund. So that way they could make a lump sum payment toward their loans in the case that PSLF doesn't work out. But I am really optimistic and hopeful that you will not have to need that cash pot in the future for folks who are multiple years in. I think best practices is to, fill out that paperwork like you were talking about, Michael. So go to studentaid.gov, Google, or like look in the search bar or type in the search bar PSLF form and use that help tool to fill out that paperwork. understand your options. If you're on the save forbearance, continue or consider switching to a different plan. And that's where I can come into if you need help evaluating your options and understanding what your monthly payments will be too. But I think just doing those things along the way to help increase the likelihood of everything working out at the end of those 120 payments will really be beneficial and help pay off in the long run.
Awesome. I'll close on this thought. We talk a lot about locus of control. So there's things you can control, influence, observe, and be not even aware of. And so the closer you are to the center of that target, the better your life is going to be. And having things properly allocated in those four categories, right? The things we can control is very limited, but going in, educating yourself, filing the paperwork that you can, making sure you have an individual to send it to and not just the HR@employer.com. Those are the things that we want people to do, right? That's what you really help them do is you create a plan for what they can control. Now you can only influence how quickly those forms get approved or get sent back to you, or when the qualifying payments come back, what that lump sum would be if you're doing the buyback. You can only influence that by filing the paperwork. But with those things that you're observing, kind of that next layer of the target here, stay informed. Don't just read the scare tactic headlines to your point. Actually go into the program and see what it looks like. I see it a lot with retirees too in Social Security. Is Social Security going away? And it's like, well, when you
Yes.
actually dive into it, there are some very small changes and actually probably a combination of about three or four changes that could make this last until, you know, 2100, year 2100, but it would just be these small tweaks here and there. But everybody's wants to write the headline and get the clicks that Social Security is running out by the end of 2035. And it's like, well, yeah, if we do nothing, if we just sit on this ticking time bomb. And
Right.
so there will be change, but all that to say, it's a very high likelihood, or at least there's optimism that PSLF will be there. Just stay on it. Just stay enrolled, stay engaged, stay consistent with your what you can control, and really absolve yourself of any of the outcomes that are beyond that you can only influence. And that's the best you can do, and being okay with
It is.
that.
It is. And what I tell people too is like, don't feel like you need to force anything or make any rash decisions either. Like, I don't want people to feel like they have to rush to switching repayment plans or feel like they have to be afraid or like rush to do something or even force PSLF if it's not a good option for them anymore. Like, I try to tell clients that PSLF should kind of fit naturally within your goals. You don't need to necessarily make decisions based off of that either. So if there's another job you'd rather take in the private industry because you'd be significantly happier or paid better, like that's wonderful. I never want people to feel like they're kind of stuck in this box and they have to force to make it work if it's just not working anymore, if it doesn't feel right for them too. So as you know, Michael, when you're creating financial plans for clients, we want to increase the likelihood of you actually implementing our recommendations and that it makes you feel better and not worse at the end of the day, and that you're not being locked into something that you don't love or agree with or that makes you feel good at the end of the day either.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often say, work on your plan, but make sure the plan is working for you. Don't
Yeah, I love
don't
that.
forsake your own happiness just to squeeze out a few extra dollars or water from the stone.
Yep.
So I
Life
love
is
that
way too
advice.
short. Yeah, it's way too short to do that.
Absolutely. I will just echo that. And that's a whole nother podcast topic that we could
Oh,
dive
totally.
into.
On next week's episode. I'm just kidding.
Well, thank you so much, Emma. Your wealth of knowledge, I think anybody listening can obviously tell that. Any final advice for somebody who's looking to dive into their student loans or get started on the first time, or who even is nearing the end? Kind of that one line that you would say when you're looking at your student loans, think this way.
Yes, great question. I always tell people be your own best advocate. It goes in line with what you said too, Michael. You have to be informed. We can't trust that other people will know this better than we do or have our own best interests in mind. So you really do need to be your own best advocate. I get a lot of my information from just reading studentaid.gov and trying to read up on things on LinkedIn too. Like I follow some student loan lawyers who have really great advice. If you sign up for my newsletter on octoberloans.com, that's a free newsletter. I haven't been super great at sending it out lately, but I'm trying to do a better job of keeping people informed. I also offer 15-minute consults if you want to make sure we're a fit before working together, but please keep me in your back pocket if you ever need anything. But in the meantime, studentaid.gov really does have great information on it. It just takes a little bit of a while to get through and to read through. But it really will help you be your own best advocate if you take that a little bit of time, even if it's once a week you sit down for 30 minutes, just read studentaid.gov or brush up on the requirements and things like that, or reach out to other resources. TISLA, TISLA is another really great organization. It's free student loan advice as well. Betsy is who runs it. She's fantastic. So I highly recommend reaching out to TISLA if you need anything too, if you want some free resources or free guidance. And that
That's
PSLF support group too on Facebook.
that's excellent. So I guess what I'm hearing from you is there's plenty of resources out there, to your point. And more importantly, if you're not willing to or unable, right? I see a lot of physicians with young families early in their careers, a lot of administrative expectations. And if you're not able to, roll up your sleeves, dive in and be your best advocate. Find somebody like Emma who will be for you, and hire that out. But definitely have really good conversations with her so she knows exactly what you want to get out of it.
Absolutely. Like if you can afford it, I'm here for you, but I'm sensitive to that. Like I know not everyone has $5.99 to spend, so those free resources are wonderful. But as I've gotten older and I have more dollars available, I really enjoy outsourcing things that I need to, like personal training and filing my taxes every year and yard work and things like that. So if you're able to outsource it and you need student loan help, I will be your student loan nerd, as Michael and I were saying at the start of this call. Like I will be your student loan buddy and your best friend and help guide you to the finish line to get those loans forgiven for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Emma. Again, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks so much, Michael. Super happy to be here. And yeah, it was great. I'm looking forward to actually listening to it when it's posted. So thanks again.
You're very welcome. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Health and Wellness Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Michael Schwartz, Certified Financial Planner and Master Certified Physician Development Coach. If you're looking for additional resources for integrated physician retirement planning, please visit healthandwellness.com. We'll see you in the next episode.